at once. She called out with every last ounce of her being, "I can't do this anymore. It's in your hands." She didn't know exactly who she's calling out to, but she was just done. No energy left to fight or even endure. And in that very instant, the transition occurred. She describes feeling an immediate, profound shift. It felt like 100 physical boulders had been lifted off her chest simultaneously, and 1,000 stadiums filled with screaming fans had been instantly silenced. For the very first time in her life, she felt complete, absolute peace and serenity.
Total peace after everything.
Exactly. Then she heard a big booming voice. She wasn't sure if it was internal or external, but it distinctly asked her, "Are you ready?"
Are you ready? And what did she say?
Being in this unprecedented state of perfect peace, her immediate and instinctive response cried out from her soul was an unequivocal yes.
Yeah.
In that instant, after saying yes, she felt 3 hard pounds on her chest. That's when her physical heart stopped, and she felt herself leave her body.
Wow. That transition from decades of suffering, the attacks, the exhaustion, to that moment of absolute peace, the question, and that immediate yes. It's an incredibly powerful lead-in to the NDE itself.
It truly is. It makes you wonder about the role of surrender, maybe, and readiness in these kinds of experiences.
Absolutely. And what followed was the near-death experience itself, which, according to the source material, is particularly remarkable for its distinct phases and unique elements, especially these deep dives into the nature of knowledge, code, and reality creation.
Okay, let's walk through it phase by phase, just as it's described in the source. The initial state she found herself in was the blackness.
The blackness, not a void, she said.
Right. She initially called it the void, but clarified it wasn't an absence of anything. It was the opposite. It was everything. The source of every possibility, every single spark of creation existing in this state of pure potential.
And what did it feel like in there?
Within this blackness, she felt an overwhelming presence. Source, God, the universe, however you want to frame it. It felt profoundly like being home, accompanied by immense unconditional love and an equally immense curiosity about this state.
But she didn't remember being human.
No. In this state, her consciousness knew something drastic had changed. She wasn't suffering anymore, but she had absolutely no memory of her human form, Brianna, or her entire Earth experience. Her only conscious thought was a moment of inquiry. Am I dead?
And then the monks appeared.
Yeah, during this phase in the blackness, 3 figures appeared. She describes them as monks sitting cross-legged, smiling. It felt to her as if they were gently laughing, like a benevolent amusement, as if to say, if you only knew.
Huh. Hinting at what was coming.
Perhaps. Hinting at the profound truths she was about to encounter or had just glimpsed. After this brief appearance, they just drifted back into the darkness.
Okay, so after the blackness.
After the blackness, her consciousness transitioned into what she describes as a vibrant, intensely bright blue tunnel.
A blue tunnel. Yeah. Filled with ones and zeros, like binary code.
Exactly. Filled top to bottom with flowing ones and zeros. She was moving through this tunnel at what felt like supersonic speed in her spiritual body.
And she felt like she was being downloaded.
Yeah, she had a deep knowing that she was being downloaded with an incredible amount of amazing information. She compared it to Star Trek warp speed, a rapid, intense influx of data.
But she didn't know what the information was.
Not consciously, no, not in that moment. Just that this extraordinary fundamental data transfer was happening.
Okay, blue tunnel, binary code download. Where next?
Next, she ended up in a white space. This was the complete opposite of the blackness, not potential everything, but manifestation, full of energy.
And what was in the white space?
Only 3 things present. Herself, and she notes this was the only time in the NDE she felt or appeared remotely human-like, though still not fully aware of that distinction.
Okay.
In front of her was a giant pile or stack of black numbers. And behind her, she felt the distinct, powerful presence of an ascended master teacher.
An ascended master. She felt it was Jesus.
Due to her upbringing, yes, that was her interpretation. But she acknowledges it could be any ascended master teacher, a guide figure specific to her path or understanding at that moment.
And this is where the math revelation happened.
Yes. This white space was where it occurred, and she described it with such joy, with what she called childlike enthusiasm. She picked up the black numbers from the pile, threw them exuberantly into the air. And exclaimed to the presence behind her, "No wonder you love creating."
Because the universe is made of math.
Exactly. She realized in that moment, with absolute clarity and elation, that the fundamental building block of the universe is math. The structure, the patterns, the very fabric of existence, it's all based on mathematical principles.
Wow.
She called this the most exciting revelation of her entire NDE. She communicated this realization and her joy to the presence via thought, receiving no verbal response, just that confirming, loving energy.
Okay, so that's a huge realization. Then came what she felt was the majority of the NDE experience.
Right. This occurred in a realm or space that was somewhat reminiscent of Earth, though distinctly different. Familiar elements like buildings, trees, ground, sky. She even saw utility poles.
Utility poles. Weird detail.
Yeah, grounding it in a strange kind of familiarity. But crucially, no other humans there. The inhabitants were other beings.
And what were they like?
She described them as cartoonish, like mannequins or Russian dolls, engaged in various activities, working on a craft, stocking a store, walking, even sliding down trees. They weren't experiencing reality the same way she was.
And this is where the really mind-bending stuff happened. Instant reality shifts based on thought.
Exactly. This is the part the interviewer highlighted as being uniquely mind-blowing. The snow moss tree example is perfect.
Right, remind me.
She saw one of the beings sliding down a tree covered in snow. She had a fleeting thought, I didn't think I liked snow. A simple preference. Instantly, in her experience, she was sliding down a tree, but hers was covered in lush, vibrant green moss.
Oh, so her thought changed her reality instantly.
Instantly. And the aha moment was instantaneous, too. She realized she and the other being were doing the exact same activities sliding down a tree, but experiencing it simultaneously, yet separately, based purely and immediately on their individual preference or thought.
So it wasn't like one reality was more real.
No, both were happening in parallel, dictated by the consciousness experiencing it. Which, as you said, connects back to how subjective reality is even here on Earth. Two people see the same event, have totally different takeaways.
Right. This just shows the mechanism, but without the time delay.
Precisely. Another vivid example involved a body she found herself in there described as robot-like. She was trying to fly with other beings, but was terrible at it, ran into something, and severed her arm.
Ouch. But no pain.
No fear, no pain, no panic, only profound curiosity. She thought, wonder what's going to happen. And as she watched, her arm began to grow back together.
And she saw the binary code.
Yes. Visually, she saw it stitching itself back together with binary code, the same ones and zeros from the blue tunnel. Oh, cool, was her thought. This directly connected that download to the fundamental processes of healing and creation in this reality.
That's incredible. And the dancing.
Right. She described being in a store with other beings when they all collectively had the thought or intention to dance. Instantly, they were all dancing in perfect unison without words, as if choreographed for millennia, just by sharing a collective intention.
So everything happened instantaneously based on thought. The snowman example, too.
Yeah, the snowman. She thought, what happens if I get too close to that flame? Instantly, she was under the flame, instantly melted into a puddle of eyeballs.
Eyeballs.
Then she thought, I wonder if anyone will put me back together. Instantly, beings came and did so.
Wow. No delay at all.
Absolutely none. Between thought, reception, and action, all instantaneous. She describes this phase, despite the weirdness, as a beautiful communion, everything in perfect alignment with thought and intention.
Okay, so towards the end of this phase, she saw a boundary. A barbed wire fence.
Yes, a barbed wire fence stretching out, with blurriness beyond it. Some of the beings she'd been with were moving through an opening in the fence onto a land bridge, heading into that blur.
She thought they were transitioning.
Yeah, she perceived it as them moving to the next realm or frequency beyond this particular layer of reality.
But she wasn't asked to go. No life review. Still didn't know she was dead.
Correct. Unlike many other NDEs, none of that happened. Her focus was entirely on the reality she was in.
Then the last part, the dark, tight room.
Exactly. Ended up there, felt the presence of 7 magnificent beings behind her, more significant than the Ascended Master, less than Source, she sensed. Powerful presences.
And the scroll.
In front of her, a scroll. Parchment, beautiful golden sparkly script, humming with knowledge. She got incredibly excited.
And that's when she remembered being human.
That exact moment, excitement peaked, human identity reasserted itself. She thought, oh, you're showing this to a human. And just like that instant the thought formed, the human ego identified itself. The scroll instantly ripped away, rolled up, disappeared, and bam, sent straight back to her physical body.
Wow. Talk about a sudden ejection. The contrast must have been incredibly jarring.
It sounds like it was. Which brings us to the aftermath and the difficult process of integration. Hitting her physical body again was, she says, incredibly intense, like being violently stuffed back into a sausage casing. Her immediate reaction was to try to go back. Called out to the creator, tried meditating, breathing, nothing worked. It was one way.
And she felt like she'd been gone for months.
Yeah, 2 months, subjectively. Then this wave of fear washed over her, terrified she'd open her eyes in a coffin underground.
Oh, man.
Imagining her family, grief-stricken, might have disregarded her cremation wishes, feared being buried alive, having to dig out, or suffocating.
That's horrifying.
She had to work up the courage just to open her eyes. When she did, she saw the time on her phone, 2:08 a.m., looked around, everything was the same.
And only 8 minutes had passed.
Only 8 minutes. What the heck just happened, she thought, grappling with that immense time discrepancy.
So the integration process must have been incredibly difficult after that.
Oh, absolutely. The year after the NDE, despite the physical symptoms stopping, she went into a deep depression, didn't want to be here anymore. She was in a whole new state of survival, she called it. Not surviving pain, but surviving the shock of return and the loss of that other state.
And her illness came back eventually, even though NDEs sometimes cure people.
Yeah, it's noted NDEs can cause spontaneous healing, like Anita Moorjani's famous case. And initially, Brianna's myoclonus dystonia was in remission for about 18 months.
Oh?
But, she recounts, she fell back into her old ways, focusing intensely on her career, trying to live the life she thought she was supposed to live. And as she did, the illness returned.
But that relapse wasn't the end of the story. It led somewhere else.
Exactly. It seems it propelled her down a different path toward deeper healing. She ended up getting that experimental brain surgery they wouldn't do when she was 18. Deep brain stimulation.
And it worked this time.
Complete success. They hoped for maybe 70% relief for the dystonia, but she got around 90% improvement on both dystonia and myoclonus. She called it a miracle.
Wow. So surgery helped significantly, but the NDE questions remain.
He did. 6 months after the successful surgery, she made another bold move, left her corporate job, which she previously thought was the best job, to go on this deliberate hunt for meaning.
For meaning, okay.
She needed to understand why she had the NDE, what it meant, why the illness returned, why the surgery worked, all of it.
And meditation helped.
Big time. In a meditative state, she wasn't told answers, but she was shown a metaphor. A river and mountains, books being thrown onto it as stepping stones.
Books as stepping stones?
Yeah. She wasn't a reader or writer then, but she understood implicitly. She had to write a book to process and share her experience. That became White Flame.
So that started her new path.
It seems so. A path aligned with her NDE insights. She became a certified death doula, volunteered with hospice for 2 years, loving being close to that veil, started her own business, building a life that felt authentic.
But she felt there was still more subconscious stuff.
Exactly. Deep-seated subconscious programs from a lifetime in survival mode. Knowing the power of the subconscious